Hello everyone and welcome. The Black Shadow. This is quite a special video for the channel as we're about to be having a crash course introductory into the world of Dune Imperium 3v3. Now this is a variant of the game mode that was first released with Dune Imperium Uprising when that came out back in 2023 and allows you to team up with your friends to take on opponents in 3v3 action over the board of Arrakis. Now, at first glance, it looks like there is a absolute ton going on with this, and certainly this is a variant of the game that is quite niche, admittedly. There is very little coverage of 3v3 out there on the internet, be it with guides or setup or strategy or games. It's not really something that ever gets covered, quite similar to Epic Mode back was for Dune Imperium Classic, but I figured that it'd be really interesting to kind of delve into. I have some awareness of it. I know some folks who do play this quite a bit, and one conversation kind of led to another. And so here we are. I am not going to be doing the teach of this, however. I'll be joining along with community member Priceless, who has played his fair share of 3v3. He's been joining for us for this. So it's really, really interesting. I hope you guys will learn plenty about this. And I am actually hoping to even do a casting of a 3v3 game with Priceless in a few days or so, which will be quite the experience. Alright then, so it's time to get ourselves into our explanation and crash course into 3v3, and for that we've got Mr. Priceless with us. How are you doing?
Hey, Black Shadow, I'm doing good, thanks. Hi, everyone. So yeah, my Discord name's Priceless. I'm really excited and thankful to be here with Black Shadow for today's video on Uprising 3v3. I've been playing this mode, since early days of base Uprising, so I've tried it without the expansion and with the new Bloodlines expansion as well. We'll probably tell you a bit about it at the end of the video. It really does change the flow of the game. I have played over 100 games by now of 3v3, which is quite a hefty amount. And it did help build a dedicated group of regular players who love the format. And we now host and enjoy daily 3v3 games and are actively brainstorming on how a tournament could one day be structured.
Cool beans. So one of the first things, a quick story for folks for the video. The very first time I ever got exposed to anything 3v3 wise was at, I think it was the first Uprising Invitational. It was held up over in North Carolina. So this was before Uprising got actually released physically, and part of that was obviously access to the box. Is on the last day, I think CJ and a couple others brought out the 3v3 components and board to have a look at it and kind of have a bit of a mess around of it. It was the first time I'd ever seen anything 3v3 wise, and I will say that when I got it all out and set up, it looked like there was an absolute bucket ton going on, especially compared to base Uprising, when there's enough happening anyways, but you've got obviously 6 players, there's extra boards, there's more spaces going on, there's all these tokens. It does look like a lot.
So how 3v3 works is basically defined in 2 teams of 3 players each. So for each team, you have 1 commander and you're going to have 2 allies. So we've got a little video on the screen. You can see here is Muad'Dib, who has to be the commander for the Fremen team. It cannot be any other leader. So the commanders don't choose their leader. They're automatically assigned. And for the Emperor team, that would be Shaddam. Now, commanders sit directly opposite to each other, and allies are seated diagonally across from their commander. That way, the turn orders are alternate. So you're gonna have, one Fremen player, then 1 Emperor player, then 1 Fremen player, then 1 Emperor player, and so on. Also, the first thing which is very interesting and why 3v3 is so appealing is that this mode enhances both strategic and social aspects of the game. So you're not just playing solo work, you're working as a team. So you're reacting to your teammates, covering for each other, creating openings, and planning multiple round setups. Because all communication is public, there's also a bluffing element, and you need to read your teammates and trust them while trying not to reveal too much to your opponents. So it does reward awareness, adaptability, and true teamwork, which is also the reason why the seatings are as they are, so that you can't actually whisper in your in your teammate's ear. Imagine the setup in real life, right? You'll have if you have your allies to your left and your right, you can just show them your hand or show them your intrigue or whatever, and so that's not allowed.
Yeah, it's a cute touch. Obviously, though, when for a lot of folks that, especially for the purpose of this, like playing online, I assume there are obviously you're not physically sitting with each other, so you've kind of got to make some rules about that.
Yeah, definitely. The very first games used to be really chaotic, so we came up with this very easy way to go, which is whichever team's turn it is, can use the voice chat. So everybody's on the same voice chat, and when it's your team's turn, you can use the voice chat. When it's your opponent's team's turn, you can communicate by using the chat box in game.
It
Avoid,
makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, just stop cross wires because yeah, I imagine that's a mess. It was bad enough in North Carolina,
Oh,
truth be told.
yeah, yeah, totally a mess, because you're asking your teammate, oh, you want me to put a troop in or whatever, and you've got the opening saying, yeah, definitely, you should go all in, or somebody asks, should I buy this card, and the opponent says yes, and the guy just buys the card, and then it's like a total mess. So
Yeah.
definitely.
Gotta work something out. Fair enough then. So let's get into how the actual game works itself. So yeah, so it's 3v3. It is team based, but you may notice, especially folks watching, that there is scoring differences. Particularly the commanders on the middle of the table here start off with additional points. They already start off at 4 victory points, which seems like quite the advantage, but it probably doesn't
Um,
work out that way.
yeah, it's actually really rare that a commander actually ends up hitting those 10 VPs. Because of how it's hard for them to get points. So they get points through Spicemas flows or through their personal track over here for Muad'Dib and up there for the Emperor. So it would be his friendship and his alliance. We'll get a bit into those later on. But yeah, it's quite rare for actual commanders to hit 10. Those 4 points account for the friendships that they can't themselves get, but they can help their teammates get. Because commanders share troops and influence with teammates, gain or pay resources when visit board spaces, pays for intrigue cards they play. They can play plot intrigues for activated allies, can play combat intrigues for either teammate during battles. So what happens if Shaddam right now were to visit deliver supplies, activating his ally Fade, who is red here? Shaddam would be the one receiving the water in his resources, but Fade would be the one who would be gaining one influence on the Spacing Guild track. If Shaddam were to go at Highliner, Shaddam would be the one who would have to pay the 5 spice to be able to send his agent to the Highliner. And if he were to activate red on that action, then Fade would be the one who would actually receive the 5 troops to his garrison and benefit from the deploy spot, allowing him hence to deploy the 5 troops and even 2 more from his garrison. Any intrigues, plot intrigues that Shaddam may play at this time, like Shaddam's favor, giving an extra troop, would obviously be given to the activated allied. In this case, would be Fade, would get an extra troop. Um, those are the little mechanics, combat mechanics, and how because you'll notice commanders don't have a garrison themselves, so that's the way they express themselves in combat. During their reveal turns, whatever dagger they're going to reveal, they're going to have to choose, pick one of both of their allies that they want to activate, and their daggers will be awarded to that activated ally. Now, one question you could ask is how do we score points in 3v3? Well, just like in a 4-player game, how does the end game trigger? Well, the first player at the table to reach 10 victory points will trigger the end game, just like in 4-player. But what happens then is that each team will total all their victory points together, and the highest total victory point will win, which makes it really a very teamwork oriented game because you don't have to rush to 10 yourself. Supporting your team is just as valuable. Also, end game intrigue cards can result in swings. So maybe you got Secure Spice Trade, which would be an end game, but you never got Spiceman's Flows. But you see that your teammate has been buying a couple of Spiceman's Flows and have 3 themselves. In which case, hitting that trade spot, which we're about to talk in a minute, will be very important so you can trade around with your teammates and give them those intrigues which will qualify for points for your team. So speaking about this trade mechanic, I think Black Shadow, what do you think? Maybe we can speak about these new spaces and mechanics on the board.
Yeah, definitely should definitely get into that. Well, firstly, I'll point out quickly before we do is the actual main board itself. Yeah, is this is the alternate side of the normal board. If you've got it physically, if you turn the board over, it has the 6 player variant. There are a lot of new spaces that are added in. Carfag makes a return from the original game, which is cool to see. There's an extra mining spot as well. Habanya Erg, I think it's pronounced. I could be wrong. It's all very tricky for me. Like it took me ages to learn how to say Lisan Al Gaib, and I still get it wrong from time to time. Quite honestly. But yeah, I mean, given the fact obviously there's 6 players, like in the day there is just more stuff happening. So I'm not surprised that there's the additional spaces on the board. But yeah, the faction spaces, there's now technically 6 different factions they hit, although not quite. It is kind of wild looking, no doubt about it. But yeah, let's get into the actual factions a bit more then, and we'll start off probably with the Emperor. I think it's a good place to begin.
Yeah, so the Emperor is for the board spaces of the Emperor, you'll notice over here is no longer dutiful services or Sardaukar. Um, its economic support is actually a new mechanic allowing you to trade with one of your allies, which basically means you can choose to pass on one of the 4 resources which are pictured over here, which would be Solari, water, spice, or an intrigue. You can trade it off in any amount with one of your teammates, and he can give you in return one of these resources in any amounts. So to make it clear, you could trade a water in exchange of 2 intrigues, or you could trade a couple of spice against a couple of Solaris. What you can obviously not do is trade with 2 teammates at the same time, or trade 2 kinds of resources like 2 intrigues, an intrigue and water against a Solari and whatever other resource. You got the point.
Yeah, yeah, it's 1 for 1. Although I can imagine trying to work out who to give intrigues to is a bit awkward when telecommunication is open and public at all times. They're like, you probably really want this intrigue. I can't tell you what it is. You just got to trust me. That's a
Exactly.
that's a bit awkward here as well. So that's it. So we got the great houses and the fringe worlds, which are kind of replacements for the Emperor and Fremen, but they are still accessible by both. But there is an actual specific board for the Emperor and the Fremen specifically.
Yeah, exactly. So they've named the big track up there. They've named it the Emperor track, and they've renamed this one the Great Houses. But the Great Houses works just classical as Emperor for all the allies who want to hit those 2 influence to get access to Imperial privilege. Will need the 2 influences at the Great Houses. Um, the military support over here is basically a very unique mechanic which allows teammates to help each other in the battle. So, in this scenario where Irulan and Fade are allies, Fade could choose to hit military support, and as you will notice, it is not a combat space as per se, but these 3 particular troops are deployable and shareable. So Fade could decide to tell Irulan to take all 3 of the troops and chuck him in the fight, or he could also say, "Hey, Irulan, how about you keep 2 of them and I'll keep 1, and you can throw them in the fight and I'll limp in." They could also choose to keep those troops in their garrison for whatever reason, if they have tactical reasons for it. But yeah, you cannot in any fashion deploy more troops. If you have an intrigue like mercenaries or whatever that is generating troops, it will not be deployable. Only those 3 specific troops are deployable. Obviously, if you have an intrigue which allows deployment, that is a different issue. But as such, the board space is not a combat space. Now, on the Fremen track over here, you will notice these are not combat spaces anymore. So the the number of places where you can deploy on these four factions have been terribly drastically reduced as opposed to the four-player game. You've got here Expedition, which is going to provide you with a contract, and you've got Controversial Technology, which is also a very strong space, allowing you to draw a card, trash a card, and draw an intrigue. Uh, now, you'll notice that the faction over here of Emperor, which is accessible only and exclusively by Shaddam himself, it is his personal track, is going to be providing quite some hefty amount of Solaris. As we get into the decks of the commanders, you'll notice that each of the factions have a game oriented towards a particular resource. So for the Emperor, it's actually the Solari. When the Emperor hits Fast Wealth, he does generate 3 Solari, and on his first influence, he's going to give a Solari to everybody on his team, himself included. Once he will reach the third influence over here, that's why you got 2 little arrows left and right that symbolize that both your allies also get this little bonus. On the third space, it's going to be a spy. Now, on his top space, you'll find the Sardaukar space, which actually costs only 3 spice versus 4 spice in the classic 4-player game.
Mm-hmm.
Very strong combat space as well for the Emperor. And for the Fremen, you'll notice that Muad'Dib has got a space called Desert Mastery, which is a deploy space, generating 1 spice for him and a card draw. On his first influence, he will be provided with a spice as well as a spice for both of his teammates. And on his third influence, the bonus is a water. Now, little important note to little important fact to note. The Emperor faction, the Emperor team cannot get hooks in this game. Only the Fremen team can get hooks. Now, once anybody from the Fremen team unlocks hooks, it will unlock hooks for their whole team in one go. With Bloodlines, it is to be noted that Sardaukars are not available for Fremen purchase, so only the Emperor team can actually acquire Sardaukars. The Fremen team, though, can always visit spaces where there are Sardaukars and choose to pay 2 spice to thrash them to deny the Emperor team, and they will get an intrigue as a reward for doing that action. Let's get a bit into the decks of these commanders, right? Because they're
Yes.
running with some different kind of cards.
Yes, it should be noted. So yeah, the commanders have different starting decks to all the other normal players have the usual starting deck, but both commanders have specific decks which are not the same either. They are quite asymmetric and do some pretty crazy things actually.
Yeah, definitely. Um, So the Emperor himself, he's got a very unique mechanic that we should have maybe talked about earlier. I forgot, which is the throne row over here. So at the right start of the game, the Emperor can choose to pick a non-Fremen card from the row and put it aside in the throne row. He is not allowed to put a Fremen card. Um, you will see that filthy Fremen to the throne row. Yeah. So it's got to be a non-Fremen card, which unveils obviously a new card out here. And this he is going to be able to do throughout the game every time he will play his diplomacy, which is called the Imperial Tent, as an agent box, which says you can move a non-Fremen card from the Imperium row to the throne row. Now, the throne row remains accessible throughout the game to both his allies and himself. It does not go away at any time, so you can reserve this card and by round 7 if that were to be your wish. Now, that is his diplomacy. Seek allies is there just like in the base game. Now you got a convincing argument, the ring. What are these other new cards? You've got Critical Shipment, which basically acts as another convincing argument, but with a really cool agent box, where you can give a water or give 2 Solaris to your ally, and keep the rest for yourself. So it has always to be the activated ally which in your physical board game is symbolized by tokens with arrows. Online, we've made these really cool colored agents so that it's easier to just know who you're playing for.
And as a note as well, so when you're activating allies, so you can't activate the same ally in the same round. Like you have to choose one then the other. I take it.
Yeah, exactly. Once you've activated one ally, your second action will necessarily be for the other ally. The only I'd say the technical way where you could activate the same ally twice in one round is if you go uh Imperial Privilege on your second action and get that first agent back.
You have a way of recalling the agent. Yeah, that's the way to reactivate people.
So then he's got two daggers over here, one of which can be trashed on play for at the cost of two Solaris to provide both face-up contracts to both his allies. The other one is one that can be trashed on reveal for the cost of three spice, providing two troops in garrison for both his allies. Now, those being put apart, he's got two really basically recons, right? They're just giving him passive Solari generation. Again, we see that the Emperor is all about Solaris and about getting that money and generating it for things like this as well. Devastating Assault, really strong card on play and on reveal because on play you're going to be able to give a troop and get a Solari. While on reveal, if you've gotten that Swordmaster bonus token, maybe you should tell them what the Swordmaster bonus token is.
We'll get to it in a second.
You can pay three Solaris to generate five swords on your reveal. So very, very, very strong combat card.
So yeah, so Swordmaster to clarify, yeah, so Swordmaster works differently in 3v3. It's not a case of just go to the Swordmaster, you get your agent, and you've got it for the rest of the game. At least I don't think that's not how it works for at least for the commanders, right?
It for everyone in the game is the same thing. It's a
Oh, is it?
one-time use only. To yeah, as you see, the board space are limited. The board spaces are limited. If six players were to have three actions each, not only would the game last very, very, very long, it's already a heavy enough game, but also the board spaces would be very easily clogged up, and you'd just end up randomly playing at whatever space is left that you can actually go to. So I think it's a very wise decision by the developers in there.
So you get a one time agent use that you have to call as and when, but you do get a this token which it gives you just +2 swords on the remaining fights.
Yeah, that's I'd say that's the reward. That's kind of like that to balance out that like you would never feel like getting your sword master otherwise. So it actually makes sense to go there because for the rest of the game you would be awarded your sword master bonus token, which would give you two swords on reveal forever. Even if you have used your Swordmaster, the Swordmaster bonus token remains. So a lot of times what you'll see will happen is people will get the Swordmaster and they're going to early reveal after having played two agents just to keep that extra third action for a really strategic moment in the game, maybe late game on a very important conflict or maybe to save some alliance at some point. They really need that extra bump. So and you'll see many games where people just don't get their sword master because that one action is and those swords is all it's actually providing. Now, looking at the Fremen deck, you'll see that Muad'Dib is generating so much spice. His both daggers are revealing for spice, which really adds up over the course of the game. And as you all know, spice can be really strong. Um, he's got the same convincing argument, his ring and the Sikh allies. Uh, so that's all right. That's out of the way. Now, what has he got over here? Uh, Interestingly enough, a lot of the cards that are here are actually trashable. So Desert Call allows him to summon a worm um, at the cost of a water, and then the card would get trashed. Threaten Spice Production allows him to ask his team to pool in with him to contribute, paying the cost of 7 spice to generate a victory point and then trash the card. So Gurney could provide 3 spice, Jessica could provide 2, and he could pay the rest. And as soon as everybody on the team has paid the price, Muad'Dib can get the victory point. Now, this is a command respect. It also gives incentive to Muad'Dib to get his Swordmaster because then one time in the game he can play this card to actually trade. So he's the only one in the game who has the ability to generate a trade situation without actually visiting the trading spot of the game. The card would then get trashed. Now his diplomacy can turn into a power play uh, at any given point that he would wish to do it if he can provided he can pay the 4 spice to get that extra bump, but then his diplomacy would be trashed, and he would not be happy if he has not found any other faction to buy from that row. If Shaddam has denied any of those factions. Usul, very strong card, equivalent of critical shipments over here. There's the other convincing argument on Wadib, where he can on play get a spice or a water and give the other resource to whichever ally he has activated on that turn. So that's a little peek into the commander's very unique decks. I think it is a question that has been raised about a bit the gameplay of each faction. So I think it's quite notable that the Emperor team has got a very strong faction game. They can snipe cards with those faction axes. They can deck build very well, going to trash spaces and stuff like that. Whereas the Fremen, they're inclined to really go get those hooks and try to get a lot of rewards and get some momentum off the fights. Uh, Emperor team can be very strong in fights as well, but Shaddam has a ring that allows him to give bombs and stuff like that. So uh, they have an edge. They definitely do have an edge on the faction race, and Muad'Dib has an edge. The Fremen has an edge in that early battle momentum.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like to me like if the Emperor team wants to win fights, it's just like sheer weight of numbers. They've just got to throw dudes in. And again,
Yeah,
and obviously the issue is because they can never get worms up outside like unexpected allies. They're never doubling battle rewards, and we know how strong that can be from just playing base Dune Imperium as well.
yeah, exactly. So they also have to be really smart about who we're getting in the fight and not really stepping on each other, so that one can go really hard on one fight, and then you might want to push the your other ally for the next fight. If by any chance you were to come into a tie with your own ally, uh, in this situation, for instance, where red and blue, who are allies, have tied, one of them can choose to concede to the other. So they can just discuss, and Irulan can say, okay, Fade, you can just have the second place. I'm happy with taking that third place. So that is something to be aware of.
Yes, combat. Although you're on teams, like you still technically compete against each other on the combat track.
Exactly.
So with the leaders set up here, the game does the developers do have like a rough suggestion of like how to set up your allies. I've got the page up here of like recommended allies for people, kind of being that it's fairly lore authentic. You do not have to do this though. You can set people up in whatever spot that you so wish. So feel free to mess around with that. I'm sure there are some bizarre combinations of leaders that are like really powerful.
Yeah, very, very true. It is very true. Now, as you experiment the game, and I really invite you to do so, you'll obviously notice that some leaders might be a bit stronger on one faction than the other. Typically, leaders who are happy having early Solaris would be happier on being on Shaddam's team, and leaders who are very happy to have early Spice, like Jessica or Staban, for instance, would be very happy on the Fremen team, just because of how Shaddam visiting his base over here will provide Solari to the team, and how Muad'Dib is visiting his base over here will provide that early spice for everyone. Um, but yeah, as Black Shadow mentioned, feel free to do and mix and match however you wish. That also adds depth to drafting and replayability. Also to team strategies. Sometimes you might want to be a bit more combat oriented. Sometimes you want to be a bit more oriented towards the economy or the deck building aspect of the game. And you should definitely try all the combinations out. They're all worthy of being played.
So Bloodlines has come out, relatively recent in the past few months or so, which has obviously introduced new cards, new mechanics like the commanders and such. Also, all the new leaders as well. Has that made quite a big impact to how 3v3 plays?
Yeah, definitely. For us 3v3 players who have played a lot of Uprising 3v3 and now play Bloodlines Uprising 3v3, we see a massive change. It adds a better balance, especially for the Emperor faction, who was a bit struggling to, balance out those severe worms from Wadib, especially because the Sardaukars are a major threat and a good resource tool. So the Fremen have to actively work on denying those Sardaukars from the Emperor team, or it can get very dangerous for them as stacking, those kills on one player in the Emperor team, which is sometimes a strategy that is used, could make a Sardaukar worth like 6 to 9 swords, right, depending on the skills that you've actually gathered. So that can be terrible in late game and generate a massive amount of strength, which can be really hard to battle even with worms. Um, Also, because of how Swordmaster is a one-time use only in 3v3, every action matters very much. It is huge and crucial that your actions are efficient. So that means that fewer actions increases the reward of high reveal effect cards. And as we all know, Bloodlines introduced the command mechanic, which is cards that gives you rewards for showing 6+ persuasion on your reveal turn. So all those new Bloodlines cards have become crucial and massive in 3v3 because you're saving actions and maybe getting bumps or resources and stuff like that. And the Emperor team was actually able to snipe cards with that Imperial tent, is able to snipe those really juicy cards from the row, like Chome Demands, the one where you can just go and accomplish those contracts and stuff like that. So that's also giving, that extra edge to the Emperor team with those really juicy cards. Um, you got a couple of new intrigues also, which allow you a bit of more deployment, or cards like Elite Forces, which is just a 3 coster, but for a commander like Emperor, Elite Forces is one of the best cards for him, just because he has the Emperor tag on almost all of his starting decks. So with Elite Forces, he can just hit those Sardaukar spaces on his board, on his personal faction space, and trash a random card from his starter deck and transfer him into a deploy spot, get that extra intrigue, get that extra troop. So yeah, a lot of little technical stuff which we can probably speak about in another video, but definitely a lot of stuff in Bloodlines has buffed Emperor and made it a much more competitive gameplay where Fremen and Emperor are fighting hard at each other to try and get those victory points and go for the win.
That is awesome stuff. All right then, yeah. So, bit of closing the video off. Then, you got any sort of final thoughts to folks that are watching if they're interested in 3v3?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, for my closing thoughts, yeah, I'd say that 33 Bloodlines turns Dune into a team-driven strategic powerhouse. Yeah, you've got asymmetric mechanics, faction flavors, long-term planning, a lot of team strategy, reveal synergies. Um, and if you love team play, clever coordination, big satisfying combos, this mode definitely delivers. Again, my name is Priceless. You can find me on Discord, on Hidden Assets as well. Feel free to hop in that 3v3 channel in Hidden Assets. Drop us a message. We'll be glad to welcome you in the community, show you where the games are happening, and hopefully have you join us in the game. New players are definitely welcome, and we'll happily teach you. We're looking forward to maybe organize a tournament in the future. So keep yourself posted and keep an eye out for that.
Super stuff. All right then, man. Well, very much for your time. There is hopes in the next few days, so at time of recording, that we'll actually be able to catch a 3v3 game being organised in a few days or so, and so it'll be myself, Priceless, like actually doing a call for that, which will be a very curious experience for me. It's gonna be it's gonna be very very strange, but yeah, no, it's just it's cool to kind of like be able to show a light on a side of Doom which it hasn't seen a whole lot of coverage, really, realistic at all. Not just from us, but from anyone, really. It's a bit like when Epic Mode was out for the original Dune Imperium. It didn't see a whole lot of coverage either. But, I think definitely there's a lot of cool stuff that is going on for U3. We spoke to Paul Dennon about it, and, we acknowledge that there's a lot of... It felt like a very more of like a passion project, probably, from him and the other developers helping out. And definitely it'd be really cool to see some of it in action.
Yeah, thank you very much, Black Shadow. We have definitely worked hard in making it accessible to players. We've installed little clocks situations and stuff like that. So I think that casting the game will be a really good showcase for players to see how we've worked into making this game accessible for people who don't necessarily have too many R's. There are a lot of thoughts like that, like, oh, the game might be too long. So we'll try to showcase how it's actually we've worked hard on making it. We tweaked a bit the mod and everything to make it efficient. So looking forward to that, to casting that game with you and able to share that with the community.
Super stuff. All right, there, man. Thanks. Thank you much for your time, Prices. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure, and keep tuning.
Indeed. So once again, thanks to Priceless for his time helping me put together this video. And yeah, it is really interesting kind of getting insight into the different side of Dune Imperium that I've not really ever experienced before. I think it's wild when he says that he's played over like 100 games of just 3v3, and it's just like, have I even played 100 games of Uprising? I'm not even sure. But yeah, it's awesome that there is like a part of community that specializes in this 3v3 game mode and plays it so much that like they're playing like games like almost every day. Like that blows my mind realistically, but it's really really heavily admirable. And so yeah, hopefully we can get this video done of us covering an actual match. We can talk a bit more about the specific strategies and tactics being employed, and also kind of how the player chat works as well. And yeah, I think that'll be a really really cool experience. So hope you guys have enjoyed this video and you'll join us along for that one as well. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. We'll see you soon.